Neil, and thank you everybody for being here. And indeed, on behalf of the learning team and on behalf of all of us, thank you for all being here and having also prepared for these sessions in which we are going to work on and exchange on our experience across our different project nodes and share our learnings and thinking further about also our transdisciplinary practices. So, as Leon said, without further ado, let me then also just hand the floor and the space to the Mexico project node team and to start sharing their experiences. So I'm not sure who is going to share that.
I'm going to share. Is that okay, Carlos?
Great. Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. So, well, thank you for being here, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever. So we are going to talk about the work that the Mexican node have done so far. So as I was saying, Lakshmi, Carlos, and I will give the presentation, but the node is also conformed by Marisa, Beth, Jaime, and Beatriz. So the presentation follows a brief introduction of the case study. We're going to talk about the objectives, a timeline of the activities that we have carried out so far, a summary of the problem diagnosis, and our reflections so far on the approach we have followed. So some of you already visit our case study during last year's meeting. So the case study is a peri-urban wetland in Xochimilco, which is located in the south of Mexico City. And this site has a very rich cultural history, as it is also a farming system whose origin dates back to pre-colonial times. And the farming system is known as the Chinampa system, which is this photo on the right side of the slide. Because of its historical, economic, environmental, and cultural relevance, it is a site that has several national and international designations for its conservation. It is a Ramsar site, it's a World Heritage site, and a natural protected area. And currently, because it is immersed in urban dynamics, it is a site with a high level of anthropization and environmental degradation. Just to talk about a few issues and challenges in the Xochimilco wetland. Well, I have to say that there is an extensive documentation on the complex social and environmental problems, including problems related to poor water quality and water scarcity due to multiple causes, including overexploitation of aquifers and surface water contamination from untreated water discharge, which is caused by informal urbanization in the protected area, which is linked to lack of access of housing, corruption, and political clientelism. And also, in addition, there is a decrease in the value of agricultural practices and therefore a loss of the agrarian identity, and also a lack of interest of the younger generations to continue the agricultural tradition, Chinampa's abandonment, and therefore the progressive loss of the region's cultural heritage. So these are just a few of the issues, and of course, because this is a complex system, there are many, many, many other issues on the wetland. So I will present the objectives as they were requested in the form. And I would like to mention that since our research is trying to follow a participatory action research process, these objectives has been refined and reformulated, as we go through the activities. So we will discuss this aspect of this approach of participatory action research further on the presentation, but I just wanted to mention before. Well, I will present the objectives that were requested separately as scientific and societal objectives or goals. Although it's worth clarifying that for us, this separation is kind of or somehow contradictory to our attempt to unify the research with action in the social and environmental areas. So the first objective has to do with identifying the governance landscape and how it influences the management practices and the ways of addressing problems in the wetland. And within this objective is the identification of the causes of social environmental deterioration, the actors involved, the activities, relationships, and the associated interests of these actors. The second objective is to reveal patterns in the narratives about the management and dynamics of the wetland, for which we seek to identify dominant narratives that perpetuate its current unsustainable condition. The third objective is to map initiatives that are working in the area to identify their potential as an enablers of transformations based on their conditions of learning, empowerment, and networks, and then to see how we can collectively explore with these initiatives more sustainable and transformative futures. The fourth objective is to design spaces and processes to co-create transformative narratives that could increase the sense of agency. And for this, we have proposed to implement hands-on activities to promote relationality and collectively imagine alternative futures based on a positive conceptualization of sustainability and transformative actions. And finally, we consider the societal goals as something more transversal to the project and something that would result from the first four goals that I just said. Although, of course, these societal goals might be shaped and changed, since the theory of transformations implies that we cannot anticipate and know the outcome of the transformations, and especially if during the transdisciplinary process, we are going to involve more visions for this case. So for now, the societal goals are to increase a sense of belonging to the territory and the awareness of taking care of the social ecological system through more relational understandings, and share efforts and diverse initiatives through the action research approach, focus on increasing collective agency. So I'm going to give the floor to Carlos now.
Okay, thank you, Patty. Hello, everyone. Here is the condensed timeline of our overall activities. We have developed different activities to address our objectives. For example, activities to diagnose main causes of wetland socio-ecological deterioration and to understand socio-ecological dynamics involved in this process. Or activities to identify individual collectives and initiatives with influence in the area. The main instrument that we used was in-depth interviews, fieldwork, participant observation, mapping of initiatives with transformation potential, and 2 workshops, one using deep listening and artistic production among older adults and young students, and the other one, it's a collective art exhibition about the territorial and water linkages. The next party, please. Well, I will now briefly share an example where we develop workshops with students from secondary school in Mexico City. The aim of this activity was to develop and test environmental education interactions that could serve as example for contributing to understanding the struggle, needs, and hopes of older generation and how they envision a transformation towards sustainability in the area. For this purpose, we implement a series of workshops to foster intergenerational transmission of knowledge using a strategy that combines the method of deep listening used by indigenous people, agroecological hands-on practices, and artistic productions. The methodology was tested with 160 students between 14 and 18 years old from 2 schools in the region, one public in the wetland and one private in another area of Mexico City. And the main idea of exploring how to build bridges between older farmers and young people was guided by the following particular objective. To recuperate traditional knowledge, practice, and life stories of traditional Chinamperia producers by sharing with younger generations, stimulate an awareness of the wetland socioecological values among younger generations, and provide opportunities to build a greater sense of agency among the youth of the region for conserving the socioecological heritage. The next, please. In each workshop, there were 3 main activities. First, a Chinampero, a farmer, shared with the student his or her life history in Xochimilco. For this, we try to ensure that a student adopt an attitude of deep listening and respect for the person and the learnings received. And second, the student learn about the agroecological practice in the Chinampas and carry out a practice with the farmers. The next one. Well, finally, students represented their learnings and experience in short story or teeny books, and the results show that students highly evaluate the experience and appreciate the need for protecting and conserving the site and its heritage. More broadly, we consider this experience to be promising in terms of contributing in how certain methods might facilitate more meaningful learning experience, able to connect students with the life history of the Chinampero. In this case, by sharing knowledge and emotion with the traditional agroecological practice, by experience them, and with other forms of evoking impressions and learning through art-based instruments. Therefore, the combination of methods used allow a learning experience that favors the transmission of knowledge, demonstrating its potential in building intergenerational bridges. The first scientific paper of our note describes this particular process. And the first complete draft is currently being revised by suggestion and concrete contribution by the rest of the node members. And we hope to send it to a journal in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Okay, I will finish the presentation with highlighting a couple of things we thought important to probably discuss with Nile Basin Node and the rest of the consortium members here. So this scheme, maybe most of you maybe remember it because we presented it already a couple of times. So I'm not going to go into the details, but the idea is that, as Patty was saying, that under this participatory action research with some transdisciplinary also elements, we are designing and thinking our process in terms of loops that I will explain the next slide, but loops that are iterative, and these were the first main objectives that we thought during the preliminary proposal plan. So can you put the next one, please, Fatih? So if we go into the first loop, let's say we do a zoom on the earlier scheme. We started our team with being mainly more of a core research group, although Umbela, the NGO, is also a part of our research, let's say, core group, but it was mainly academics, no? So if you see the blue parts, you have reflect, plan, act, observe, then reflect again, etc., etc. So those are that's why we are thinking it in terms of loops, because it's not planning everything ahead, but it's planning, acting, observing what happens, and then reflecting again to co-design the next steps with the rest of the team. So because our core research group, here we put A, got expanded to group B, not really research, the objectives have been in a way changing, and this is normal in any action research process. So for example, in the acting part, we just highlighted 4 things, okay, doing the interviews, participant observation that Carlos was already mentioning, exploring these bridging encounters, and thinking of how to explore different alternative methods. For example, the one also explained by Carlos, art-based, and mapping the initiatives with transformative potential. So this, in this current phase of the process, we passed from a core group expanded, where we had government representative, another NGO, Chinampero, and also artists and private initiatives. So that's like the core group B now. And in a particular endeavor that Carlos also mentioned, and we will talk a little bit more maybe later, we are having around 40 people engaged in this new phase. So we are, as the little thing says there, in the now, so in the observe thing. So one last thing here is that we have really tried to resist and question this dominant linear, and we think quite simplistic logic of conceptualizing the phases of a project as discrete phases, no? And so, of course, it's important to be able to report in a way that even if it looks a little bit linear, it isn't. But we have really tried to resist this, and that's why the diagnosis of the problem is never finalized, and the perceptions and understandings also change when engaging with different perspectives and emergent system conditions. So we don't think we have a diagnosis phase and then another phase. We think the first step here, the station, let's say, is a way of understanding the different framings identified so far. But the more we delve into the understanding of this plurality of framings, the more the diagnosis will change and get enriched. So that was why we thought it was important to mention again these loops. And the next one, please, Pati. So some of the key aspects in this preliminary diagnosis is as I was saying, the formation of this action research or transdisciplinary group in 3 layers, allowing quite a lot of time and energy in co-designing the different possibilities that social actors also want for the area. And this is, in a way, so I'm going to already talk about the challenge here associated to this. And this is that it will, we think, will be a persistent challenge, this team dynamics and formation, because researchers and professionals with different backgrounds and trajectories are required to generate an interdisciplinary process. But at the same time, thinking of the transdisciplinary nature, this expanding the team to incorporate non-academic actors obviously also increases the challenge of being, of jointly keeping on doing things in the project. So this is just something that maybe all nodes have already observed, and the how to address these potential or existing tensions will always be well, something there to think and to learn from. So the next bullet, please, Patty. We have been doing diverse types of mapping here. Just put some examples, no? So we have the mapping of the actors and the organizations with influence and agency potential. So some previously known, of course, and others suggested by others. So the snowball method. We have also been mapping initiatives with transformative potential. And we also have started, let's say, we haven't finished this part, but we have started mapping certain dominant discourses and narratives that are related to causes of the degradation, of possible solutions, etc. So just highlighting one of the aspects that have been part of the diagnosis, if you can give me the next bullet, Patty, is about the mapping of these transformative initiatives. So for example, based on 3 criteria proposed by Toki et al. That we can share the reference later if you find it useful. The criteria was learning, empowerment, and networking capacities. So this was proposed as a way of identifying which types of initiatives that are already working in the area have certain transformative potential. This was also inspired by Kotari et al. In 2020, where they also propose thinking of the initiatives as transformative if they are addressing the root problems, if they are questioning development discourses, if they have an ethic radically different from one which sustains the current system, if they have political action towards vulnerable or marginalized groups, if they encompass multiple dimensions of transformation, and if the gender aspects are addressed or not. So these are, for example, just to give you a little bit more of a sense of what we are doing. And the next bullet, please, Patty. So through what Carlos was explaining, and through this particular endeavor of mapping transformative initiatives, we the 2 working hypotheses that Carlos proposed and tested for this first part of the year, the 2 hypotheses have been confirmed through these 2 different experiences. And the 2 hypotheses, one is the fragmentation of initiatives. So there are many things, many efforts, things happening there, but they are not really articulated. So that's why we're saying they are kind of fragmented. And also the loss of traditional ways of knowing, ways of doing through the generation. So those were like the main initial working hypotheses, and they have been confirmed by the different instruments implemented so far. We also have seen an increase in certain practices that further contribute to deteriorate the system, as football, as changing the chinampas for football fields, for example. And the next one, please. So two, and also the last one. The 2 things we think related to how are social actors responding to our convening these spaces and doing these activities. I mean, this is obviously preliminary because we are still in the process of analyzing and inviting other actors for the next endeavor. But we have, in a way, observed quite a strong will, let's say, to engage in these other types of activities that also try to resist this typical logic of workshops that people have already done it so many times in the past. That's another one of the aims of these activities, is to to also try to have spaces that are not the typical ones that they are already tired of. So we have seen that there is quite a strong interest from certain of the social actors that we have engaged with, and with respect, for example, for this for the initiatives that we are engaging with, there is also an interest in being part of a geospatial platform that represents these diverse initiatives as seeds for transformative change. This is based on the seeds for the good Anthropocenes. And the next one, please, Patty. I'm almost finishing. So some reflections that we thought could be potentially interesting for sharing between the nodes are the following. Can you? Yeah. So the first one is this finding a balance between a participatory diagnosis. So from participatory action research, if we would have done a participatory diagnosis, we would still be in it. No, so that was one thing that we really discussed, because we wanted to do it as much of a participatory process in every step of the process, but that of course is feasible until a certain limit. But we also, the most important thing here is that we thought that staying too long on a participatory diagnosis was also perpetuating, in a way, these negative framings surrounding this. So it's like to put a lot of attention on the problems rather than putting attention in something else that maybe evokes another types of activities. And of course, also the diagnosis comes, but the center per se is not in mapping completely again and again and again all the problems and the challenges and the underlying causes for deterioration. Although, of course, it's very useful. The other one is that the need to create these meaningful spaces where really most, at least participants, feel free in this co-designing. So yeah, the agreements collectively are established from the beginning, and that helps in sharing of the responsibilities and the ownership. And this is, well, this that I was already saying, that these activities that transcend the certain logic of planning, we have had a positive response so far, and we can talk about it later more if you're interested. The third one, please, Patim. And this is like some like we think quite a big heart of our node, is this on how we can be exploring while implementing methods that are more relational, art-based, serious games, future studies, indigenous methods, and many others, to see if we can enable this building of bridges to articulate the generations, as Carlos was mentioning, but also the initiatives with different, sometimes opposing visions, interests, and needs. And how can we, with such a plural and diverse group, facilitate the conditions to imagine more hopeful and plural futures, and then, based on that, co-constructing certain pathways for these desired futures and implementing actions that are a little bit more transformative. The last part, Patty, yes. So at the end, the main aims for this process is that we believe that if we foster this increasing sense of belonging to the territory and to others, there could be more possibilities for building meaningful interactions and increase the sense of agency of participants that seem lacking it, and then opening more plural decision-making spaces and the transformative endeavors. Oh, sorry. And the last slide is, I'm not going to read it, but it's just some of some examples of articles that connect this interest that we share in our node of thinking of how can we design more embodied, emotional, relational atmospheres. And that, yeah, more and more and more increasingly, they have been described as very important in thinking when activating transformative change. So we just wanted to finish with this. If you're interested, you can we can send you obviously the PowerPoint, and you can to check these very nice articles. And that's it. I hope we didn't take too much time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, all Mexico team. That is very nice, very interesting to learn from you. Yeah, so I think we can still go have, for a short discussion then on on your experiences, on how you have tried to tackle the transdisciplinarity in your project. Some interesting words. So maybe already from one of the other participants, other than the Mexico node, maybe already has some inspired ideas about through the presentation. Yes, please, Emanuela, I see a hand raised. Let's.
But I'm not from the Mexico node, so if you
I know.
want first to give the
clear.
I can also leave the floor to.
No, I think it's very good to force people from the other nodes now to ask maybe some questions.
Yeah.
Or comments, or what it inspired you.
First of all, I would like to thank you all for this very inspiring presentation. And indeed, I would be very interested in reading the papers, the article that you referred to at the end. So please do share the reference. Thank you. I think, and maybe you will see later when we will present the Nile node ideas. There are several overlapping in this in the work that we are doing or planning to do. So that looks very exciting to me. I have a few specific questions or clarification, like when you say that you want to map the dominant narratives and discourses, I was wondering if you can clarify how you are planning to do this practically, through which methods. I was also intrigued by this idea of deep listening. And so I would like, I wonder if you can elaborate more. What's the difference between listening? Sometimes we hear about active listening and deep listening. So I'm curious to learn more about that. And I found also very interesting when you talk about the sort of agreement that you are planning to do. I guess that's before the. So if you can, I guess the agreement is with the local community. So I wonder at which stage you're doing that, in which form, and what's the role of this team? Is it mediator? Is part of the agreement? Because I think that would be also quite helpful for to design our intervention with photo voice that we will explain later. Thank you.
Who would like to respond?
Carlos, do you want to respond to at least the two last questions? And I can then say something about the narratives. So the first one was, if you can tell a little bit of more deep listening, no? And the last one was, what is the agreement?
The agreement.
Yeah.
Okay. I start. Okay. Well, about deep listening, it's not so easy to difference deep listening from active listening, for example. But deep listening is a way of indigenous communities, they share the knowledge from adults to young generations. And we are using this methodology because the farmers in Xochimilco mostly are indigenous people. And they are living in the city like the other person. They are not living in the old way of community people, but they have the roots in this indigenous community. Then we thought that it was a good idea to practice this methodology. And it was very nice because, I don't know, the place where we did the experience was in the Chinampas, and the farmers then was very comfortable there, and the kids were very enthusiastic because for them it was very new. The most of them never had contact with the Chinampas before. And then the activity was to stay in the Chinampa, and the farmers told his history about the relationship with the place and his history of life about living in the Chinampas. Well, and that was the experience. And the listening, it's about to share your knowledge and your experience, but in a good atmosphere to incorporate them from the kids. And what I don't know if it's okay. Yes.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Well, and the other about the agreement, we are working in this collective art event where we are trying to generate relationship between different actors, and the art is the instrument to build these agreements, because they are not thinking in their own interest. They are thinking in a common objective that is this art collective. And we observe that in this kind of atmosphere, the people, it's most interesting in the building of relationships. And then we are thinking we can use this first step to think with the people in different ways to go to sustainability in the wetland. And then the agreements are slowly appear in the activities in the groups.
Yeah, thank you. Would you want to add something, Lashmi or Patricia, in relation to these other parts?
Yes.
Questions.
Well, yes. Regarding the narratives, this is something that we started like before this project with the Lakshmi thesis and the T-Labs project. We we did some research about these narratives using the Q method. I don't know if you remember that I also proposed this methodology to use it between the different nodes to explore also these narratives around the participatory action research and transdisciplinarity and how we see transformations. So we kind of use it like in the same way in Xochimilco to explore these different narratives. And with these activities, with this project and the interviews and the participatory observation that Carlos is doing, we're going to kind of like keep building these narratives and explore if they have changed or if they are still the dominant narratives that we identify in the T-Labs project before. So yeah, just wanted to say that that is the methodology that we use at the beginning of this objective, this very specific objective. Lac, do you want to say something else? Okay.
No, nothing to add, Lakshmi? No? Okay. I didn't see your picture, Shay. Let me then continue to Leon, who has raised his hand already for a time.
Yeah, let's unmute first. Yeah, thanks. And thank you, Mexico Note, for a nice presentation and a lot of nice ideas and also indeed the references. Maybe we can ask all the notes to share their presentations and collect them, because I think that's interesting. I'd like to ask you to expand and maybe reflect a bit more about what you have been saying about the distinction between scientific objectives and societal objectives as a bit of a difficult distinction to work with, and also the how we deal with the fact that reality is non-linear and non-discrete, and that the problem diagnosis goes in an eternal sort of iterative loops that in fact never finish, which I recognize, and which it's nice to sort of bring this into the discussion. And at the same time, science having sometimes discrete phases, projects like our project having quite discrete phases, but also if you do, for instance, science towards a paper, or if you're doing a PhD, you do have your own sort of also your own needs that sometimes is also maybe good to just acknowledge and express and bring into the conversation, but that can be at odds with what happens in a societal process, or maybe not. But just these sort of dichotomies that we impose that indeed are sort of difficult in reality, and that we also still need to work with, especially in sort of producing scientific research. So I'd like you to expand a bit more on that than you were able to do in the presentation. That's basically my request. It's not clearly a question, maybe, but yeah.
Jaime, Marisa, or Carlos, do you want to comment on what Leon asked? I can start saying something, and I hope you also help me. Yeah, so trying to honor this action research like approach. Since the beginning, we have been trying, at least. Of course, everything is everything can improve little by little, and we learn from each phase. But since the beginning, we really tried to make an effort in being very clear and transparent with the objectives. Like objectives for the project, objectives for each activity, and how these relate. So most of the times, of course, because it's us inviting other people, we proposed, not every time, but in many times, yes, we proposed broad objectives to be discussed inside the group. And that is why before this form, we had less objectives than what we presented now, because they were not separated. So they were like a mix of what we already presented separately to reflect on, okay, if we just think about societal goals, okay, maybe it's more this, and this other part is more scientific, but it's like quite kind of mixed. So I don't have a lot of meat to elaborate, but I can say that instead of saying thinking of this as a negative framing and just resisting it, we reflected on how this is now difficult for us to separate. Because, for example, if I'm thinking of my scientific goal, like the one that I like the most, which is exploring and learning from tools and methods that could increase through relational things, something of agency, many of the social actors that I have talked to, they are interested in exploring these methods. You know, so it's not like I'm exploring methods on people that are over there, and then, well, yeah, if they get empowered, well, that would be nice, but I'm testing my methods on, you know, so it's like, really like being in one same group without these distinctions. And I think that also helps in creating atmospheres where you don't have like this divide between academics and the rest. But we are just in this process of seeing how this works. So yeah, I don't know, Carlos or Jaime, do you have something else to add?
Well, yes, I will try to explain my point of view about this. Well, I think in participatory action research, the main objectives are the people objectives. And actually, the research is an instrument to promote, to achieve the people objectives about, for example, Xochimilco wetland. And we are more interested in the process than in the objective, because the objectives, a lot of time, it's something that you build with the people in the participatory action research. Well, you have a main idea. For example, you are thinking in the sustainability of the place. And that is maybe an agreement with a lot of actors, key actors in the place. They are thinking into in the future, the chinampas must be there. No, that is the general idea, because this is very value for its socio-ecological characteristics. Then that is the main objectives. Then when you start the process of participatory action research, you are inviting people to your team, and the objectives are built in this process with the people. For example, when we note that there is a problem between the intergenerational knowledge transmission, we talked with the people about it, and they told us that it's true. The old farmers don't have the opportunity to transmit the knowledge to the young people. Then we work in this this idea of the workshops with the students in the different schools in the Xochimilco. But I don't know. I think the objectives in this kind of research are built in the same process. You have a big idea, but you are building the objectives in the same process.
Thank you, Carlos. Very clear how you explain how basically objectives building is also that relational activity. And so together with your own objectives, their objectives, then in that relation with your participants, you are developing and co-developing new objectives for your brief. Anamika, you have raised your hands and maybe not so small question, but maybe a short answer.
I know, yeah, I'll be very quick. Actually, you don't have to respond if in case it takes more time, we can discuss. But so when I saw your presentation, it is really very helpful for the Brahmaputra node as well, because many things that you have mentioned, we want to also bring into our project. So two quick things that comes to our mind, because that has been our challenge as well. So when you talk about transformative or initiative, say, for example, what we saw is that when there is a program in place, which is for a particular section of the society who are vulnerable and marginalized, if we look at it as a transformative approach or an initiative, what we also see that there are several trade-offs around it. Some of these programs makes them too dependent on these target-based program, although it helps them initially, but it doesn't really develop their skills further. And we also found there are trade-offs, for example, in the other sectors. Not suppose it's focused on water, it might have an impact on other environmental resource. So what I just wanted to ask is that, can we kind of acknowledge these trade-offs and still say that, within this scope, this seems to be a transformative initiative? That's one thing that I just wanted quick reflection from your point, your side. Second is, when you say participatory, how do you take care of this whole power issue? When you invite people and you talk to them, like for a country like ours, there are even different kinds of farmers and you put them together, some speak, some doesn't. So how do you try to break this power dynamic? Is it by continuous dialogue or, yeah, so that's something, these are two things that if you can just reflect upon.
So who wants to reflect on?
About the second one, for me, I try to use some, for example, ethnography tools. And I think the key question here is, how do you interact with the people? And then the fieldwork for me is very important. I'm trying to stay there with the people, working with them, for example, in the Chinampas, and going to the events, going to the familiar events, for example, a birthday, or for example, I don't know, a party. And that is the key for build the relations with the people. And in participatory action research, that is the key for construct the teams. That is my strategy. I'm trying to go there and stay there with the people and to understand the problems, the way of thinking, and to share the activities every day. And that is the way that I learn about the problems. That is my way of diagnose the problems in the place. Of course, there is a first step where you read about the place, the bibliography, and the other academic methods. But the more important activities are in the field with people.
And maybe quickly to say something about your first comment and question, Anamika. Thank you for that. I think with this particular part of the project, which is this mapping of transformative initiatives, things are currently being analyzed, so we cannot say a lot of things, but what we kind of started discussing is, what about potential? No? So how can we identify potentially transformative efforts, projects, initiatives? And maybe with that, it's more about enabling conditions, no? And what are these configurations of enabling conditions for transformative change, rather than this is transformations, this is not transformations, and again creating a divide that it's not, I don't think it will be very useful for us. So yeah, as there aren't almost any example of wow, the transformation to sustainability of this X place, it's just like a compass, no? So how can we think of details, insight, capabilities, conditions? I'm not finding maybe another word that I want to say. And what are the configurations or articulations of these conditions towards something? I think that's something that we could discuss as nodes in thinking more of this potential for more transformative change. I don't know if that was useful, Anamika. Thank you for your questions.
I think your ideas are very useful. And otherwise, it's up to the deep listening of Anamika how it relates to her ideas. And that's something what we also learned. Thank you very much. So what I very much like to from your presentation, how you are dealing in this node is indeed, for example, how Carlos says, well, a big part of the research is actually also just participating in more than the research. That is where I actually relate and learn also about the problems. And with the deep listening, I think, again, this relational idea of, okay, what is, so I think the difference between active listening is that particular element is that you are non-judgmental, but in deep listening, I think you are judgmental. Because you are, then how does what I learn from my opposite, how does it resonate in me? And what does it say about me? So then you take it, in that sense, a judgmental stage about yourself, maybe more than about the other. But so what does it mean to me? Or that's one of the things that I take on it. Let's go to our Nile node. Do we want to have a short break for 5 minutes for just setting it up? Maybe get a cup of tea or anything else? Okay, let's have a 5-minute break. Then I ask one of the Nile node people to start their presentation.
Yeah, so I'll come in first and then invite Amel to come in. This will not take long, Amel. I'll invite you to come in also. I'm not sure if you're able to see me. It is extremely dark where I am. The lights have failed to work, but I had already put my camera on before. Yeah.
We can see you and we can hear you clearly.
I see.
So,
I see.
please.
It's extremely dark here. Yeah. So I'm waiting for Anika to share the slides, but we realize that this is the Nile node. For some of the people that may not know about the Nile, there are 11 countries in the Nile Basin. Would say 10 plus one which is Eritrea, which is an observer. In the Nile Basin, yeah. So we realize that our research, our study, and the work that we're doing to connect journalists and scientists falls within the Nile Basin. And in this group, we have Anika and I, who are from Water Journalists Africa and Infonile. We have Dr. Mel, who is from the Nile Basin Capacity Building Network of scientists. And also we have Emmanuel from IHE Delft. So Anika, we are waiting for you to share the slides. Yeah, so that's what I was talking about. I talked about the individuals that we have in this project. Anika, could we go to another page? I already shared this. Yeah, so like I said, 11 countries in the Nile Basin, and you will realize that there are several challenges within the basin. If you paid attention, you'll find so many environmental challenges like climate change, water scarcity, and these are the challenges that we come together to address. And also, there is a critical gap between the data published by the scientists and also and researchers and the translation of this data to the general public for them to take informed decision, which is certainly done by the media. So in the past, we've done several studies, and we found out that there is a big gap between journalists and scientists. And so then what scientists were doing was to do research and keep the research within their bookshelves, and which does not go to the public. Yeah, so then this is why we came out to do this study and also the research. Yeah, we got another page, Anika. Yeah, this project that we're doing, we builds on to what we had done already. And we actually were all on this project, the Nile Basin Capacity Building Network, both Journalists Africa, and also, led by Emmanuel. We did a study, a project that fell under the Deep Sea 2, DUPC 2, and this study focused on the open water diplomacy. Well, open water diplomacy, we first thought we could call it Open Water Diplomacy Lab, but later came the Open Water Diplomacy Project. And under this project, we did a study of the media and looked at what was covered in the media in the Nile Basin, especially when it comes to the mainstream media and, looking at the narratives on the Nile River and its infrastructure. Yeah, you may think of, infrastructure like the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, yeah, but we found out that most of these stories are caught up in the national trap. And remember, it's a transboundary river, but you find that these stories in the media in the Nile Basin are presented as issues of national security and national interests, whereas they should be issues that are cross-cutting because it's a transboundary river. Yeah, so then this is why now we came in to bring journalists and researchers, to make sure that we are not simply external observers of such a dynamics with our work. So we aim at representing reality, and therefore we also contribute to shape narratives about rivers and water within the Nile Basin. Yes, therefore our main research question is how can we transform water issues or projects by transforming our narratives? Yeah. Nika, we could go to another page. We put down our hypothesis that we've brought up as in transformation to a peaceful, sustainable sharing of water resources in the Nile Basin in a time of water scarcity and climate change can be enabled through provision of scientific-based information through the media. Yeah, so our focus is therefore to translate scientific research on water issues to, societal action. We want to make sure that this research that is done by scientists is not, kept within the bookshelves, but is brought up. So then the communities that we serve as media houses, as journalists, can take informed decisions based on science. Science done by the researchers, by the water scientists. Yeah, we could go to another page, Anika. Yeah, so then these are our teams. Water Journalists Africa, through its arm in the Nile Basin called Nile, is based in the Nile Basin and runs a network of journalists in the Nile Basin, over 1,000 journalists. But also we run in a platform called NileWare that brings together scientists and journalists to co-produce knowledge. Yeah, and we are currently running, co-production fellowships. And also we have the Nile Basin Capacity Building Network. Later from this slide, Dr. Mel will talk about it, but also we have Emmanuel representing the IHE Delft. I'm going to invite Mel, if you're still with us, to take on the next slide. Yes.
Sure, I'm still with you, and I'd be happy to start the next slide.
Yeah, thank you so much from you, Dr. Amel. Anika will come in.
Thank you so much, Fred. Maybe before I start, I have to mention that today the presentation from Mexico team was really inspiring, and I think we will learn a lot from what you have reached so far in developing our research work in a different way, I would say. So thank you very much for what you presented, and for our research part, it's not yet fully started. The two case studies that we are going to present is just, we consider them as a kind of pilots in the Nile Basin, because we couldn't go for many countries, but we thought that the main idea about being in this project is not about conducting traditional research, but to focus on a different approach to conduct research. And maybe Fred mentioned in the beginning that the idea of having case studies is to how to try to develop different transformative narratives, and how to translate scientific work into outputs that can be supporting decision making or supporting communities' better resilience. So to start the idea about research, we had a lot of consultations with the partners, and we decided that water scarcity is one of the key issues in the Nile Basin. It might seem that the Nile Basin has a lot of water resources, but we have a big problem, especially not in the physical water quantities, but maybe in the economic water scarcity. Water scarcity from the economic point of view, and I mean here the management of the water resources, or whether the quantity or the quality is one of the severe issues, and also the access to the resources. Sometimes we have huge amounts of water, but we are not able to access it for agriculture, for domestic uses, for industry, etc. So this is the reason we decided to go for the water scarcity as one of the alarming topics in the different countries in the basin. Most of the basin countries are facing drought as a climate impact, and we also wanted to highlight this. But also we are facing other problems related to climate impacts. This is the reason the topic was selected in the beginning. And the two case studies that you're going to work on, one is going to be in Egypt and the other is going to be in Tanzania. The case study in Egypt will focus on assessing coastal adaptation strategy and socioeconomic impacts for mitigating water scarcity in Egypt Nile Delta, specifically the West Burulus. Maybe to clarify why was this topic selected? Because of climate change impacts, the Nile Delta region, which is on the northern part of Egypt and directly along the Mediterranean, which is the downstream of the whole Nile River, is facing sea level rise, and it might be a dramatic impact of climate change if the Nile Delta might be drowning, as a lot of hydraulic and climate studies have been indicating. And actually in Egypt, a lot of supporting climate mitigation projects are currently happening to protect the Nile Delta. One of the important mitigation measures is to go for developing artificial sand dunes as one of the protective measures for the sea level rise. In the past, this area was actually composed of wetlands and also a lot of agriculture area around the wetlands and fisheries. But because of the possibility of the sea level rise and because also of the intrusion the anthropogenic intrusion in this region, the natural sand dunes were not there anymore. So one of the ideas for the protection of the Nile Delta against sea level rise is to go for the artificial sand dunes. And this is actually intervention to the natural system. And I have to mention that people in the Nile Delta, especially in the northern part, are very much depending on groundwater abstraction to cope with the deficiency in irrigation water. So assessing the impact of the artificial sand dunes as one of the protection measures on the abstraction of groundwater, on the salinity level of this groundwater, and also how it will impact the livelihoods of the communities around these areas is the core topic that this group is going to study. Actually, I have to mention that it was very interesting to hear that you have been going through the action, I would say participatory action research, because this is what we hope to do. We are still in the very beginning and we wanted to develop and adjust our objectives in the research in consultation also with the communities as one of the key stakeholders. And I have to highlight that our research team from Egypt, before I move to the second case study, one of their main objectives is very scientific because they wanted to develop a decision support tool to assess the interventions for the protection of the Nile Delta regarding the sea level intrusion. But how they are going to assess the component related to community needs and how they are going to focus on this is one of the key challenges that are going to face in this research study. This is in brief the first case study. Moving to the second case study in Tanzania, and I will come back again to Egypt and Tanzania in general, but moving to the second case study, this is another level of research because the Kagera Basin, which the research team in the Dar es Salaam University selected, will focus on interdisciplinary assessment of agricultural water resilience under climate change in the Kagera Basin. Kagera Basin is a transboundary river basin, and it comprises a lot of countries from the basin. I can mention Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, as some of these countries. So this is another level of research focusing on transboundary sub-river basin. And here the focus again is on communities and on also how to deal with water quantities and quality monitoring and how to include community in this kind of monitoring, but also how to develop solutions that can support communities and to develop policy recommendations that can be in favor of communities living in this sub-basin. Why are we working in the two different countries? Because again, it's a learning process for us in the Nile Basin. The different characteristics of each case study would be interesting to see what are the joint possible learning objectives between the two countries. But the main core is that the focus is not only on research, but on how to translate this research into communication tools so we can have better information to decision makers. And this cannot be done from researchers alone. And this is the reason we are collaborating with InfoNile to develop a set of tools that can help the researchers to translate whatever they are working on to be in a better and a positive narratives that can be leading to transformation in the management and in decision making when it comes to interventions for climate mitigation or resilience of communities. This is in brief about the two case studies. I'm not going to talk more about case studies because, as I mentioned, from the next maybe webinar, the research teams themselves are going to be with you to talk about what they are going to do. But because we are still in the very beginning, we thought that this time we as team members take the lead. But next webinar, groups from both partners will be discussing with you in depth. And I think we learned a lot today from Mexico case study And maybe later we can discuss further about how to focus on the cross-learning that you mentioned in your last slide, and how can you learn from what you have reached so far, so we can even test some interventions that you are interested in, maybe in these case studies, since we are in the beginning of the research. So I think a lot can be discussed later. I will stop here, but before I stop, I would like to mention that this is, of course, a multidisciplinary research case studies. And from the very beginning, the two research teams who are working in both case studies are already including researchers from different disciplines, social, engineering, communication. A group that will start from the early beginning to work together. And this is also emphasizing that it's not only about the technical components, but it's about the different disciplines that can bring on board different stakeholders during the research implementation. Thank you so much. And I move to Anika to continue what we propose to do as a research team in this Nile node. Thank you very much. Sorry, I have before Anika, it's Emmanuel, I think. Emmanuel is going to present this slide, if I'm correct.
I think so.
Yeah.
Right, Monica?
Okay.
Is this my slide?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
I think our methodology, I think, addresses two aspects. Indeed, one of the idea is to adopt a specific visual research method, participatory visual research method called photo voice, which imply working with local communities, local groups, leaving the camera in their hands to document what they consider the main problem, concern of the community. That's the first stage. So to record and reflect both on community strength and concern. The second stage is the second step is to use the photos to elicit a conversation and a discussion inside the community among different groups that constitute this community about key issues, in this case, issues related to the two case studies that Amel described earlier. And then the third step is to identify potential actions, solutions, or things that people want to do to transform and to address the problem identified. That this is the transformative dimension of this research method. Why? I think one of the reasons that we are working already with photographers and researchers in different Nile Basin countries, also in a parallel project to this one, Nile Well. In this project, researchers and journalists are matched in couple to co-produce original pieces of communication based on research. One thing that we realize is that both journalism and research can be indeed rather extractive. You go there, you collect your data, your information, you take your photos, and spending few hours, days with people on the ground, and then you go back to your media outlet, to your university to craft your piece. It can be it for media or for the academia. So the idea here is to involve in a different process through this methodology, photo voice. Yeah, so this is one. So one reason is to be to practice a different way of communication and research, and less extractive, a bit towards the relational approach that was already described and discussed earlier by the Mexican colleagues from Mexico. I think another added value of visual research and participative visual research is the possibility not only to collect data and technical problems and visualizing technical issues, but also to record emotions that people associate to spaces, to infrastructure, to technology, and to but as well also to natural resources like water. So to highlight and explore the effective dimension of the problem. So in this, in our methodology, we as we discussed earlier, and I think also as the Mexican colleague are doing, I think there are two levels, two type of problems that we want to diagnose and address. In order to do this, to explore, to answer our initial question, how can we transform a water problem by transforming the way we represent, we narrate it? I think we need, first of all, to explore and address what was called the narrative, the mainstream narrative and discourses. That's why I was also interested in learning more about your methods. And please, I know that Patricia is no longer here, but if you can share again your Q method, I think she mentioned it. I think I miss it, so I'm very sorry, but my hardware has a limited capacity. This one, I mean. So please, if you can resend it, that would be very helpful. Because we were thinking indeed of exploring through content and discourse analysis in relation to the scarcity, how is groundwater management and governance in the Delta frame? How is in the Nile Delta frame? Same from the Tanzanian case. But then there is a second layer or type of research, because I think we also need to question and reflect on how we, as researchers, as journalists that come as external observers, how do we frame this problem? We framed, and you heard from Amel, we identified it as a problem of drought and therefore water quantity, but maybe what we see as a problem of water quantity, so drought or defense adaptation to climate change, building those artificial dunes by people on the ground, by local actors, it's perceived in different terms. It can be problem of access, problem, and therefore problem of distribution, or a problem of conflict, and therefore problem of water justice, or can be a problem of pollution, or maybe a combination of those three approaches. So this will come indeed from a reflection on the ongoing research that NBCBN is already carrying on in this in those two case studies. And then the idea is to, once we have those two narratives, to foreground alternative narratives that are crafted and produced by the journalists or the photographers, the researchers, and local community. So this is a bit the approach.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I can go from here. Yeah, so some of our goals for the problem diagnosis phase, the societal goals, are to come up with a joint understanding about the various dimensions of the problem among, first of all members of our node, which, as we mentioned, is transdisciplinary, including journalists and water scientists from different countries, as well as trust building among all of the partners. Traditionally, it is difficult a lot of the time for journalists and scientists to work together. We have different ways of working, different timelines. So this process is very important for us, also to understand the other's approach before we go on with the activities. So we are gaining a better understanding of scientific research and, of course, research on transformations on our side as journalists through various discussions and collaborations with the other partners in the node, as well as the broader Transpath team. And on the side of NBCBN, you're also gaining a better understanding of communication and media through discussions and collaborations with us, and coming up with improved ideas for addressing these problems through transformative research and communication methods and transdisciplinary collaborations between journalists and scientists, such as through employing the photo voice, participatory photography research methodology that Emmanuel has just talked about, but also even going beyond how photo voice has been employed in the past to involve journalists in the entire process, to work together with the researchers in the photo voice process. And then another goal is finding synergies between ourselves as project partners in other projects so that we can develop broader transdisciplinary collaborations. The other team members mentioned how we are also working together on the Nile Well project, where we match journalists and scientists, and some of the activities that we are proposing for Transpath are also linked into some of the activities for Nile Well. Yeah, and then the goals for the problem diagnosis phase on the scientific side. By adopting the photo voice participatory visual approach, we hope to foreground the perspective of local communities in the 2 case studies in Egypt and Tanzania in terms of identifying and defining problems, concerns, and solutions. Then explore how these community perspectives can also inform the framing of these issues by the media and researchers. And finally, co-produce a joint narrative between the media, researchers, and local communities. So far, some of the methods that we have used to diagnose problems, now this is on the side of the media and how journalists are communicating water science and things like that. We frequently do surveys of journalists in our network or journalists who have gone through our programs and seeking their input on an ongoing basis on different challenges that they face in communicating water science, the impacts of our program so far, so what is working, what's not working, and how we can improve them to better address these challenges. So this includes general surveys and also specific ones, such as in relation to our Nile Well platform that connects scientists and journalists. And then we have monthly meetings with our network of country coordinators. These are journalists who represent us in each of the Nile Basin countries. And so that provides them a forum to share inputs on challenges that they're facing and opportunities in their countries in regards to science communication. And you'll find that it's not the same in every country. So every context is different and there's different challenges, there's different opportunities. So we learn a lot from those meetings. And then also conversations between journalists and scientists in all of our programs. So whenever we have training workshops or programs that bring together journalists and scientists, we give them a chance to have conversations and dialogue seeking their input on these challenges that we are discussing, and also facilitating dialogue between the 2 groups on how they can address the challenges. So starting to come up with some of those solutions. And these are continuous activities and led by our programs and communications team. If Amel is here, I can bring her back for this slide.
Okay, I'm still here because I couldn't leave this very interesting discussion. Actually, I postponed my appointment already. So just to continue what I started, maybe the key important message here is that selection of the research teams took us quite some time to discuss with partners in different universities, because usually we used to conduct research work focusing on the expertise from the scientific discipline. But here we wanted to inform our partners that this is a different approach in conducting research. So we had to start by gathering a multidisciplinary team in both countries, and to make sure that even within the team, they have their own media people, in addition to the media support and communication that they will get from our InfoNile team, and introducing the new tools for communication, like the photo voice and other tools under the Nile Well project. Also, the important thing is that we started to already engage our postdoc lead researchers to the different training activities of the project, and also with the InfoNile team, because as my colleagues mentioned, we already developed together and organized training workshops on science communication tools, and development of co-production outputs out of research, by supporting the researchers and getting them into the, let's say, the essence of communication, rather than only focusing on the research activities. Next June, we will be having a joint activity with InfoNile in Cairo. It's a training workshop on co-production, and this is related to our other project under GPC3. And we are going to bring our researchers from the postdoc projects to attend this event and to learn more about the different tools, in addition to the main tool which is going to be used, which is the photo voice that was presented by Manuel and also hinted to from Anika. Also, we plan for joint meetings between the researchers from MBCBN and the media group of InfoNile. More meetings will be conducted, and very soon we'll have the first detailed planning meeting with the two groups, including researchers, journalists from both sides, to discuss further and to plan the activities from a different point of view, because as I mentioned, we received the research proposals, very fine, constructed research proposals, but they have to understand that it is much more beyond conducting research activities, and this is the reason we will start very soon to have these kind of meetings. And the other thing is that they are already informed, I mean, the research teams, that they have to have inputs to the overall project. So it's not only about focusing on the case studies from the Nile, but to be engaged in the overall Transpath plan project. So they are aware about the project objective, the different regions, the different case studies from different countries. So they are working on different levels, the project level and the node level. This was very important, because otherwise they will be consumed in the case studies, and we still have a lot to contribute to the project from now on until we conclude together. That was also important for us, and I hope that very soon they will be presenting in the next webinar with you, or the next meeting, and they will be sharing a lot of their insights in starting the research project. Thank you so much. Back to you, Anika.
Thanks, Emil. So these are the activities that we have done and the ones that are upcoming. We have already identified the participants. Those are the postdoc researchers from NBCBN and the journalists from the InfoNile network in Egypt and Tanzania. So this was done through open application processes. And then, yeah, we had a fair selection process with the jury that went through a qualitative and quantitative process to select them. And then the photographers have already gone through a 1-week photojournalism training, and that was part of our Everyday Nile program in Burundi in February 2024. So they have already received some intensive practical training in photojournalism, and this is continuing on with mentorship and some more online trainings up through June. And then right now, the preparation and support of the 2 research case studies in Egypt and Tanzania is ongoing by NBCBN to further define the problem diagnosis in each case and the research methodologies, and go on with the research. And then, like Amel and Emmanuel mentioned, we are planning for a photo voice training for this group to be held in June 2024 in Cairo during our workshop for the Nile Well project, where we are training a group of about 20 journalists and scientists in various science communication tools. So that includes writing, podcasts, videos, data visualizations, and it's a very practical workshop. So we will have a specific day that's looking at the photo voice methodology so that we don't only impact the postdocs and the journalists who will actually be implementing it in the Transpath project, but we also share this methodology with the entire group of journalists and scientists. So that's how we are bringing in the synergies between the projects to also share the methodologies a bit wider. And yeah, this will be held during the week of June 24th, I believe. And this is just some photos from the photography workshop that was held. Some of the photojournalists out in the field doing some practical exercises. Yeah, and then we will apply the photo voice methodology in the 2 research case studies with ongoing joint online learning meetings. So the photojournalists will be paired with the scientists to support them to employ the methodology and share their expertise as journalists. They will also be doing their own stories within the communities at the same time that they support the communities to take their own photos that supports the research. And the photo voice involves developing trusting partnerships with the local leadership committee, who then assist in selecting diverse groups of 8 to 10 participants from the community who are guided throughout a process of taking the photos related to the various research themes, which are then presented in group reflection meetings, and themed photo stories are curated. And here we are thinking we can take this further, as I mentioned, to bring in photos taken by the journalists as well as from the community. And we curate them into journalistic outputs as well that also involve photo voice. So it's like participatory photography from the community and stories taken by the photographers, but who have also gone through this whole process with the community. So also a way to kind of transform the traditional types of narratives that journalists produce, where they usually just go to a community that they are not from, take photos, and then publish it. So this one will be very different. And then finally, we hope to have community exhibitions, policy events, reports produced. So depending on what will be most impactful based on the specific context and the different communities, different types of visual material will be produced that's connected to policymakers or really connected to actions on the issue. So those could be community exhibitions, they can be stories, reports, and other ways to connect that visual material to decision makers and to action. And this is an example of a community exhibition. It's one of the activities that we organize frequently as InfoNile. So this is one that was done in Karamoja in northern Uganda, which is an area highly impacted by climate change and which is especially affecting the local pastoralist communities. So you can see some of the community members viewing the photos, and then we also organize discussions that are led by the local leaders related to the theme of the story. Yeah, so that's all from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Annika, and the whole team. Very interesting. Are there questions, comments? Leon has raised his hand already, so let me give you the floor, then other people can continue thinking.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so if I raise it very quickly, I can ask my question. So that's what I did. But I first of all, I wanted actually to thank the Nile Node team for sketching their updates, but also actually the sort of the I think the complexities in the Nile Basin node, because it indeed sounds like a node that is more layered than most of the other nodes in the project, in the sense that there is the journalist scientist layer, and then there is the 2 scientist case studies within that as well. And I wanted to ask, how are you organizing that sort of complexity in your team? But actually, Amel already shared how you are doing it and how you plan to do it, and also what Annika told afterwards was interesting. So it sounds actually really interesting. So I just wanted to to share that impression from my side. But I do have a question on the mostly triggered by the photo voice method that indeed was also, I remember, introduced in the workshop in Mexico, I think by Delhi maybe. I remember we heard about it there as well, and it sounds like a really interesting method. I just wanted to ask, I'm not sure if who would be the one to respond, but why is it photo voice, and could it also be video voice? And that question is and actually the other question as well is triggered by a method that I'm a bit familiar with, which is this visual problem appraisal, which is based on videos, trying to also capture perspectives and emotions and giving a voice to unheard voices in these kind of processes, but it's more video based than photo based. And the other difference that I see with that method is that apparently here you give the camera to the community, but nevertheless, I still wonder, how do you decide, or who decides who gets a camera? And would you consider also giving a camera not just to community members, but to other stakeholders, like the decision makers that you mentioned, or maybe the scientists? So those were some questions that I had triggered by the photo voice approach.
Maybe I can try to react and address Leon questions. First of all, thanks to all of you for your comments, and also for the interesting links to several articles that were shared in the chat. So why photo voice? Why photos instead of videos? I think one reason is that it's much easier to take a photo instead of recording a video, shooting a video, at least for the average I think population, in the sense that yeah, if you want really people to take part to the research with a low barrier at the entry, without having too many skills, I think asking them to take photos, it's easier than to shoot a video, just to avoid the technicalities of the media, in the end hamper the richness of the story and the richness of the data that people can collect. While listening to the Mexican experience case, and in particular the intergenerational conversation, that remind me of a different project in which I've been involved in Algeria, in which we asked young people, in particular, they were members of a scout group, a local scout group, to interview their uncle, fathers, grandfather, who were the knowledge bearer of a traditional system of groundwater governance. And in the case, those people had the local leaders of this traditional system, which is managed by the local mosque in an oasis in the south, in the Algerian desert, so south of Algeria in the Sahara. They were concerned because this system is based on the flood, which happens when there is rain, and that water is used to replenish the groundwater, the aquifer, and they used to irrigate the oasis. But the problem is that since here it was not raining, so many people have never seen the system in action, and they were afraid that to lose this knowledge and tradition, and therefore and young people are not really interested. So they asked the researchers, the local colleagues from Algeria, to help them to create this intergenerational conversation, and we decided to use this this video, but we were working with only 4 youngster that received the training before doing the video, before interviewing their, I mean, the older generation. It was a very interesting media in that case to foster and to elicit a conversation across generation and to elicit interest in the youth. I think we are using photos also because there are photographers involved. And I think it's also a medium with InfoNile has expertise in organizing local exhibition with using photography. You've seen some of the photos. I think it's a relatively also easy media to use for those type of exhibition. It's true you can also organize a local screening of a video, but I think that requires a bit more logistics. So that's why. But again, I was also intrigued by this idea of agreement with the local population and local communities, because as you say, you rightly pointed that you give the camera in the hand of the people, but in the end of the local community. But who is the local community first, and how we decide who are the people that will hold the camera in their hand. So the idea is to foreground and to visualize perspectives, voices that are usually not heard in the public debate. That's why I think local leaders or policymakers or scientists, they've already ways of letting their voices heard. So I think we would like to give preference and the camera really in the hands of grassroots people. Can be a farmer organization, can be people that are managing the local groundwater technologies, infrastructure, irrigation schemes, and so on, to represent voices that usually are not heard in public debate. I hope I answered more or less, but indeed, this is a key question. That's why, as I say, that this is the design of our research that we have designed it from outside. That's why I think it's important to come into an agreement, first a conversation and then an agreement with local groups inside the local community.
I just wanted to mention something else on the video question. So when you produce a video, because we've also done video screenings in local communities, actually the same slide when I was showing the Karamoja exhibition, we also had a screening of a documentary that was produced by a journalist on the same topic. But when you produce a video, you require kind of a higher level skill in editing video. Usually to produce a video, you take maybe an hour of footage to produce a 1-minute video. So then there's a lot of decisions to be made on what makes it into the actual video and how you tell those narratives and which perspectives are shown. I think the power in that comes more from the editor. And not to say we couldn't find an editor from the local community, but even if we do, maybe that person may be at a higher level of, I don't know, of socioeconomic status to have access to gadgets that can edit videos. It may be an assumption as well, but I think there's that involved in the videos too, when we think about whose narratives are being promoted or who's telling the story.
Yeah, thank you, Annika. Also looking at the clock here, are there any other final remarks maybe from either the Mexico note on this Nile experience?
Well, I can share quick last comment. I already put a couple of things in the chat, but I also coincide that we have quite a lot of topics to be more shared, like in depth, and it's not just these two notes, but I think in all the notes. So I think it would be very interesting to have maybe I don't know if in the webinars or in other virtual workshops like this one, and just to focus on how, for example, in this case, we think of these narratives in our cases. And yeah, so I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you very much. Also, Emanuela, you made me think a lot when you said this, like, yeah, but it's also us because we are not outside. So how do we frame something also determines and shapes what we intend to do. So I think if we don't explicitly share also our framings and narratives and compare it maybe to other academic dominant narratives, because it's not only the hegemonic power that is dominant, and it's like academic narratives are also quite dominant in some contexts. And yeah, it would be good to also put that into the conversation and also share our narratives as people in each node, which is, I think, part of the positioning and positionality that we are kind of trying to do. Anyway, thank you very much. I enjoyed it, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Lakshmi, and I think you have some valuable last words there mentioned, and indeed also where I think we can have also in other webinars in the learning series to more think about maybe some of the methods that we are using in exploring these different narratives. So what I found also very interesting is how both your teams are using visual methods. So you had the tiny stories, but also the photo voice. You use visual methods to explore a deeper understanding of maybe something that cannot be told. And then you come also with what you explained about what are the underlying emotions maybe within a picture, and what does that tell us about our relation to the topic. So thank you very much. So I think indeed all as what you already said. So thank you very much for that, Lakshmi, what you concluded just. I would then also, so I think so in order for the synergies that is part of this learning session, I think we can really develop further synergies within the project as it now appears on these visual methods and storytelling or story developing or recording. I don't know what is the right term here, and exchange ideas on further developing of it, and not maybe in the sense of that, of course, we need to do it all the same, but there's definitely learning from it with each other. And it's similar with developing plural narratives rather than having one narrative that is dominant. Having plural methods, having plural ideas is, I think, adding to gaining new insights, new perspectives to the matter. So thank you very much. Very inspiring, ladies and gentlemen, people. I enjoyed it very much. Leon, do you want to say something about coming Thursday?
Yeah, I can say something about coming Thursday. Maybe to invite everyone to again join us on Thursday when we have the third session in this series, and then we have Kenya and the Netherlands, and that session is starting in Dutch time at 2 p.m. I think it's 12 noon in Universal.
Yeah, so that's 3 hours earlier than this session started.
Yeah. So if you would be able to make it, that would be nice. But other than that, we will also record that session. And like the others, I have really enjoyed this session. Learned a lot of food for thought. So I really, I so far really enjoy our learning workshop. So thank you all for contributing. Also, thank you for sharing all the links, Lakshmi. I have downloaded them and will put them also on the Google Drive for the partners that may not have easy institutional access. So now I have them. So, but thanks everyone. Really nice, and have a nice day or evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you.
Have a nice day.